Hey everybody, this is Lance Pugmire at FightHype, joined today by the actor Joseph Sikora, who stars on Ozark, which returns for season 4 Friday on Netflix. This is my favorite show. I mean, it's such a pleasure, Joseph, to have you on. You star as Frank Cosgrove Jr., the great, son of the leader of the Kansas City Mafia. And you've had such an incredible run-ins, both with the great Julia Garner's great character, Ruth, and then also with Darlene Snell, and we know what happened there, which it's a tough situation to say the least, right?
To say the least. I got to tell you, Lance, it's my favorite show too. I was a fan of Ozark before I was on it, so
is that right?
Such a pleasure. Yeah, super pleasure, super joy working on it. And like you mentioned, Julia Garner, it was so much fun to work with because that majority of my stuff was with her. But I'm a huge Jason Bateman fan, and I think Laura Linney is one of the great American actors. So what a joy.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. I can't wait to see what starts happening on Friday. And let's cut right to the chase. I mean, look, as we were saying, there was a gun being held to your privates and blasted as the in your last appearance. You end up surviving that, right? So you will be coming back. And what are you going to be doing? Can you give us any kind of hint?
Well, I think the trajectory for Frank Jr. was pretty bleak at the end of season 3. And I think that, just that he is returning, I think that that's the exciting part. How is he returning? What parts of him are returning? Is there any roboticness that's going to be in place there? And we kind of found a guy who was, just kind of a little bit of a loser. I mean, I love Frank Jr., don't get me wrong, but he lived in his father's shadow. He was always trying to come up. He was always trying to overcompensate. And I think that we will still in season 4 get some of the overcompensation of Frank Cosgrove Jr., which we've all grown to love. But that I think the relationship between he and Ruth and he and Darlene is obviously changed. So how does he interact with them if and when he sees them again? It's pretty great. The brilliant showrunner, and I use that word rarely, and I don't use it lightly, Chris Mundy, has come up with just an outstanding season. And I think that finally, for a wrap-up season of such a beloved show, I think it's going to be done really, really right, and the viewers are going to be really satisfied.
Let's be honest. Sometimes, we all know that one of the aspects that drives love can be friction, and there's clearly friction between you and Ruth. Is there any chance of a possible romance taking place this season?
I'll tell you what, I think Frank Cosgrove Jr. wouldn't be opposed to it, and he's a pretty bold guy. I was going to say ballsy, but I will not.
You can't say that anymore.
I'll stay away from that. No, yeah. But I think that he would. I think he would not be opposed to that at all.
Great. Well, we can't wait to see it. And I mean, it's been so good. I thought it was pretty interesting, by the way. We've got when I first started watching the show, I never even knew that a Kansas City Mafia existed. But now we look up on the football schedule. We've got the Kansas City Mafia going against the Bills Mafia this weekend in the NFL. Any thoughts on that game? We know that you're a boxing fan, and we're going to get into that. But are you a big football fan too?
Not a huge football fan. I still definitely root for the Bears. I'll be interested to see who they replace as the head coach. I mean, I know that they're kind of picking around after the success of the Bills last game, which was pretty big and wild. I think they're definitely calling out for the ball or whatchamacallit for what was it? It was Leslie Frazier from that team too, I think.
From the Bills, yeah.
The defensive coordinator. So yeah, I'm interested to see where they go because it was not a stellar season. I mean, I think that people were definitely rooting more for the Bears for this to be a bigger season, but I think that we're going to have to wait until next year.
Yeah, I mean, a new start, let's be honest. I mean, sports is all about having hope, and with a new coach, I think that's what hope arrives. Now, let's cut to the chase. I mean, I think it's fascinating. You're a huge boxing guy. You actually grew up on the north side of Chicago, and had 32 amateur fights. You helped train several young fighters who participated in Golden Gloves competition. This is your sport.
Yeah, I mean, I was probably more knowledgeable about boxing a few years ago, but I still keep up with it. I mean, I think that the heavyweight division is really exciting right now too. I mean, I love Usyk. The feel is my guy right there. I just thought that was a really, even though I'm not always a huge fan of southpaws, I feel like he just showed just real skill. And to me, what's exciting is that he's kind of like that harkening back to the kind of the cruiserweight made heavyweight, like the Evander Holyfield style. You know, when it was that kind of size of a guy. I mean, don't get me wrong. I do like watching these giants battle, but it's kind of like a pre and post Klitschko era, really, because you know Klitschko's really kind of have these giants of Anthony Joshua, Tyson Fury, who are huge dudes. But I think that probably Tyson Fury would rather fight Usyk than White. But he's contractually bound right now because of the WBC. But yeah, I loved boxing. I loved boxing growing up. It was really a wonderful sport. It really kind of saved my life in a lot of ways of giving me a lot of purpose and friendship and camaraderie. You know, it's so funny when you fight with a team in boxing, what a tight bonding brotherhood that is for me. And I was one of the only white people at the gym because it was mostly black and Latin. And, it was always totally accepted too. So it was great. Obviously my record, even having 32 fights, I was like 19 and 13. So that's a lot of losses, but I think that as part of it is the camaraderie and the team spirit of it that gives you this wonderful sense of belonging. So I'm very grateful to the sport of boxing, and I'm grateful to my coach, Tom O'Shea, who recently passed due to COVID. And just the legend and the legacy of the Fighting O'Sheas in Chicago, and I'm proud to be a Matador.
Well, yeah, I mean, boxing is the great revealer, right? I mean, what was it that you learned about yourself enduring all those losses and enduring that daily grind of just reporting to the gym day in, day out, not only as a fighter, but as a coach?
It was fun to instill some of the things that I learned as a fighter too when I coached some of the young kids. And one of my favorite things, Coach O'Shea would always just say you stay off the ropes and out of the corners. But one of the big things that I always remember is he said they don't have to miss by much. So, it's like stay in there, stay in the pocket, just make a miss a little bit. Always that head movement. So when I watch fighters, it's interesting. Like even like when you see actors punching a bag in shows and stuff, you can really tell if somebody who has experience to somebody who is kind of doing that for the part or hasn't spent enough time. Because you can fake it. You just got to put in those hours. And that's a big thing I think about boxing is that, especially amateur fights, unless you have a 5-round sanctioned fight, you're fighting for 3 rounds. And unless you're in the finals of the Golden Gloves, when it turns into 3-minute rounds, before that, it's just 2-minute rounds. And it's kind of this all-out sport. So it's who trained harder. A lot of it for me was training and jabbing. I won a lot of my fights just on having a good jab, and having a good lean-in jab, just because that's, for a good lean-in, you have to anticipate the other guy going in for the jab and you beat him to the punch and, slip it on the shoulder and then you can come around and work an angle or something. So it's a lot. There's nowhere to hide in the boxing ring. You're darn right about that. But yeah, I learned a lot because it's just like acting. There's really nowhere to hide.
Do you still use it to stay fit and looking sharp?
I haven't been in the ring, like sparring. I haven't sparred in years, but what you have to do to be in the physical condition that you need to complete a fight, I've always kept in that. I've always kept in road work. Even shadow boxing and balance is so important. And I think the older you get, some of those basics, just like we had Terry McGroom, the former heavyweight, who is a wonderful guy. He would come in sometimes and just coach us just on some of the super basics of balance, just up and back and right, and then work an angle and backwards to the angles. So keeping that balance is continuously more important the older you get. So some of the stuff and keeping up with the basics of boxing has been very useful.
Yeah, I mean, you had some great insight on the heavyweight division with Usyk. Do you actually think out of Usyk, Fury, Joshua, that Usyk is the guy that's going to emerge as the ultimate heavyweight champion?
Well, I think if that Joshua fight taught us anything, it's that Usyk can be hit and he can be stunned. So it's he did get stunned. He just was, I think, the superior skilled boxer in that at that time. I think that rematch, that Usyk Joshua rematch, it's going to be huge. I mean, I think the UK fans are of course rooting for Joshua to take back the belts because the rematch is going to happen on UK soil. So it's kind of it'd be really really big. But I think that if Usyk takes too many of those Joshua punches, I mean, that guy is, I mean, he's the 2012 gold medal champion. He's there for a reason, and he can't eat too many of those punches. But I think that his head movement, again, to go back to that, he was able to slip and never really, except for a couple of those straight down the pipe, and that was Joshua's overhand rights that kind of got him right there on the jaw. You saw him go back. So he can be hurt, but he's a tough guy. I mean, he's tough. I would love to see him with Fury, because they're both, oh my gosh, they're both such big personalities, but in totally different ways. Because you can see Usyk doesn't like the spotlight. He doesn't really like interviewers. So that's always kind of fun too. Whereas Fury kind of loves interviewers. Oh yeah. So I think from an entertainment standpoint, I think the Usyk Fury match would be really good for boxing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the best thing about boxing right now is that the heavyweight division is back. But I know that you're also a big fan of Canelo and Lomachenko. And you know, I was at Madison Square Garden, just saw Lomachenko fight. Looked so impressive against Richard Comey. And I think it's very encouraging right now. I don't know if you're following it, but the word that, you know, Bob Arum, Lomachenko's promoter, is saying that there's a pretty good possibility that Lomachenko would make that long trip over to Australia and fight the new
Australia for Kambosos.
Yeah, Kambosos. Would you love to see that fight? Do you have an opinion on how that fight would play out?
Well, I mean, I think it'd be really interesting because there was an upset from Lopez to the Lomachenko fight, because Lomachenko really just took way too long kind of to get started in that fight. But he earns that name of the Matrix. He's so exciting to watch. Yeah. You know, obviously a guy, it's rare that somebody can fight as good orthodox or southpaw as Lomachenko can. So I think it's really exciting. I think that if he does go over to Australia, that'll probably be the biggest fight on Australian soil almost in history. So I would love to see that. I would love to see that fight. And also, Australia is the home of one of my favorite boxers of all time, is Cosgrove.
Oh yeah, and his son is making waves too. Tim, right?
Yeah. He's I think he's 20-0 right now.
Right. Yeah. So he's in position. You know, it's pretty cool because, like you said, Lomachenko losing to Lopez, and you know, whenever a fighter makes an excuse, I think the fans kind of roll their eyes. But let's be honest, the way that Lomachenko came back in December against Comey and was just so active, you have to chalk something up to that shoulder injury that he was dealing with. That could be a great event, whether it's Lomachenko or Devin Haney. And then additionally, you know, Canelo Alvarez is another one of your favorites, and he's got this decision to make about his manager and his trainer, Eddie Reynoso, says he may move up to fight a cruiserweight champion. But then there's also interest in him fighting the middleweight champion, Jermall Charlo. And then there was some kind of like leak or a rumor out there that maybe Canelo was thinking of participating in a novelty fight against someone like Jake Paul. Can you imagine? I'd be disappointed if that happened. I don't know how you feel.
Well, you just asked me so many things. Let me go backwards.
Yeah.
Canelo Alvarez is a badass. And he's as tough as they come. He's a truly outrageously skilled boxer. And I think that he just carries himself with the professionalism that we like to see with the champion. Period. Now, if he did a Jake Paul thing, does he need that purse? Is that the best thing to do about boxing? I think that Jake Paul, a lot of people love to hate on the guy, but he has at least brought a lot of attention back to boxing. Now, the thing is that he needs to, rather than fighting a Canelo for some, you know, kind of circusy type thing, it's kind of like more like Jake Paul should do himself a favor and actually fight. He doesn't have to fight a contender, but he should fight a boxer this time. Mm-hmm. And I think that would be good for him, and I think it'd be good for the sport, and I think it'd be good because it's the guy's earned a place for us to take him, you know, at least a little bit seriously. Let's see him fight a guy who's a trained boxer rather than somebody from a different discipline. And now, all right, so then Canelo, I think going up to cruiserweight, I think he could do that. I think that Jermall, I think that I would watch that fight. I mean, what a skill was. Both of those twins are skilled fighters, but I think that Canelo's just too much for him. I would, of course, I love Triple G. Unlike everybody else who just loves seeing that kind of that skill and that excitement of that boxer. But Triple G is he's a true middleweight. He's not going to be. He's not. We've seen that. He's not going to go up. And Canelo kind of is this hungry beast juggernaut who's like totally unafraid. It's almost like if Canelo goes up to cruiser, win or lose, it's a win. It's exciting. It's, you know, not unprecedented, but we're getting there, you know?
Yeah, it does have a novelty effect to it as well because it would be so unique. Now, let me ask you this. I mean, you've earned this heels role clearly on Ozark. What if the phone rang and if it was someone like Jake Paul's team saying, "Hey, you've got some boxing experience. People love to hate you. Could they talk you into getting into the ring?"
No, man. I got, I hung on my gloves. I mean, I'm 45, man. Jake Paul's like what, 24? And I'm 5'10" and change, man. It's not worth it for me. I mean, and quite honestly, I wish him well. We have a mutual friend in Andrew Batchelor, King Batch, and so if I'd probably jump in if there was no cameras around, I'd probably jump in the ring just to move around with him or something. That would be fine. But yeah, that's my gloves are hung up. I'm not interested.
All right, Joe. Well, hey, they're anything but in the acting game. We're really looking forward to Ozark. Thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate it. And like we said, greatly interested in what season 4 of Ozark has to bring, especially with your
I can't wait. I can't wait, Lance. I've also got a movie coming out in March called Fear that I did with T.I. and Deion Taylor directed it, from who directed Black and Blue and The Intruder with me. So I'm looking forward to that too. A very different character from Frank Jr., but equally as intense.
Super cool. Keep up the good work, and we'll see you ringside, I hope, soon.
All right, man. Absolutely.
Take care, Joe.
Thank you so much.
All right. Bye, guys.